Hey, welcome back. This is your average esports podcast, episode 26. This time I got the letters in the right order, the A before the E. Uh, this time, not as much to talk about because we went through a lot of the big topics last time. A lot of Dota 2 shit happened last time. And now we're in the midst of a bunch of different tournaments for both CSGO and obviously the open qualifiers for TI. And so we're just gonna wing it. So actually, let me.
I mean, there's still stuff to talk about, obviously.
Yeah, there's still stuff to talk about.
There's a couple of tournaments going on with, there's also a lot of esports stuff going on.
Yeah, there's just general lots of esports stuff going on. You actually went to an esports tournament, I remember, over the last weekend. Rocket.
I guess you could technically talk about that as well, even though it's not on the docket.
I don't really care about the docket. I'm like real freeform, so. But basically, you went to Rocket League, right? And it's not. That's actually one of the games I don't follow, but I do know there's like a lot of. I don't know how to describe it. It seems like from the outside, it seems like there's a lot of dedication within the fan base towards that game.
Yeah. I think Rocket League, what it has going for them is having like a very small but really dedicated fan base.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say small, but obviously a lot of people that game. I mean, if you ask anybody that's like following esports, most of them will probably have Rocket League in their library because it's like such a it's an easy game to pick up. You know, it's like the basics are very easy, but it's also fun and you can play with friends. It's like it's gone to console. It's on on the Switch now. So yeah, I think Rocket League has like a huge fan base, but then like for the esports aspect of it is a bit of a smaller niche, sort of like a fan base, but they're very dedicated. I'm not sure if you got to see any of it during the weekend, but they had like a really sick sort of like fan chants going on. Like people were actively chanting, not you know your typical "Let's go VP," but rather they made specific chants for players as well.
Yeah.
So I think it benefited from being in the UK because UK fans are, you know, most of them are also like just regular football fans. So for them it was easy to sort of like do all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think Rocket League has like a really dedicated fan base. Like I see it every weekend when we play in the RLCS. Like there's so many people pouring out their support. And Psionics, the dev, they are sort of like they're trying their best to really make sure that Rocket League has everything it needs to sort of be like a healthy esports, more so than like pushing like instead of like pushing, let's say, $1 million in prize pool, they're still sort of trying to make sure that everything is like growing almost organically. Like it feels very natural the way it's transitioned from like, you know, this was the fifth season, but it was the first time they were ever like an arena type stadium. And it only, quote unquote, only had like what 5,000 I think seats, but still, I mean, for an esports like that, I think it's very good to grow in like an organic way and not force it. And I think it did a really good job. It was just a little bit unfortunate that it was doing ECS because let's face it, if it hadn't been for ECS, I think Rocket League would have gotten a lot more views, especially on site as well. Like if you
I
live
think
in
on
London,
site for sure. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
the stream viewers. I feel like that's always really hard to gauge.
That's true. No, but in general, still, I think Rocket League's a fun esports. They're doing a lot of things right. I think if you look at the broadcast, like they're trying to be really professional, but also not too too stuck up in a lot of ways. You know, they're still trying to have a lot of fun. They're rotating a lot of talent on site as well. So it almost feels like a normal professional broadcast, but still very esports. So I don't know. It was a lot of fun. It's very easy to watch. Again, like I have had multiple friends reach out to me like, yo, you know, because obviously I was at the event. They're like, yeah, I'm watching Rocket League, and it was so easy to follow because it's just putting the ball into the net effectively.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting thing about esports is like I'm not certain a lot of people get it. Not the Rocket League in general, but like small esports in general. I'm not sure if it's because it happens that like a huge amount of NA people are in esports. Like there's like a lot of fans from NA and stuff, so they have this like weird conception where like they think if you aren't the biggest, you're nothing. In a weird way, like baseball, football, NBA, like they're all like huge over here, right?
Right.
Or I guess American football, to be more specific, and I've always been of the opinion like the esport should only grow as big as relative to the actual fandom. Like that's a weird way to put it, but basically, basically for me at least, like the growth of the growth of the esports should only be should only be up to the point where they don't sacrifice the original integrity of the game or its fans or its community, so to speak. So that's how how I've always thought of it, and like it's funny because one of the other games I follow is like Street Fighter, and obviously they've had this like argument for years. But if like somebody asked me, I'd probably say that they were the ones who most sold out their own integrity rather than the like actual esports coming in. It was like they themselves did it, but I don't think they themselves realize it until it's like way too late. But whatever the case, that's just how I feel about it. It's like you don't really like. I personally don't really care about that much about like huge amounts of money or all that stuff. It's just more like, do you enjoy the game? Do you want to be like the best? Are there players that want to be the best in the game? And on a side note, I've always considered the fact that like there are so many different options to be one of the great aspects of esports. Like there's literally like every type of game out there possible, some big, some small, but whatever the case, maybe you can always find something like you yourself enjoy and can get into. So
I think one of the issues though, and why people focus so much on the money aspect of it, and I was in a press conference actually for RLCS. They interviewed our team and our players, and they were basically, a lot of them were asking about, where do you see Rocket League growing? Like, what would you like to see from Rocket League esports in the future? And I think a lot of these people in those niche esports scenes, they really want that money, or obviously want that money because
it's not sustainable enough yet to be a job, right?
Exactly, not for those players, or not for the majority of those players at least. I think. It's definitely getting there, and every esports title at some point is hopefully going to get to that point. Like if it's a legitimate esports, and like you said, if it doesn't betray sort of like the integrity of its own scene, I think it's going to get there. But for some, it could be like a really slow approach, and you have to invest a lot of time and a lot of money into this process. Like especially if you're a player, obviously. And salaries in Rocket League are, I don't even know the exact numbers, but as far as I know, they're not even close to like the top tier esports. I mean, how could it be, right? The sponsors aren't necessarily there yet. The viewership is still very flaky, and the tournament circuit itself, like RLCS, they only ran for like 2 months, online, and then they have like this one big LAN event, and that's their season. That's a little bit, it's not bad by any means, but that's not a lot of room to grow for them really. And like if it isn't RLCS, then the viewerships just aren't the viewership just isn't there. So. I can understand why they would want more money, and I think from what I've heard, a lot of them just wish Psyonix would put like bigger prize pools to basically attract more sponsors and like more people to the scene. But honestly, I think the way it's been growing now is still very good, and like by now we have reached a point where a lot of these people are getting paid appropriate amounts of money. So I don't think they really need to jump the gun and just pull a Fortnite and be like, yo, $100 million, woohoo.
I guess we'll move on to the next subject then. Obviously, Fortnite. I'm not even sure it's technically an esport yet. Like, I know everybody's talking about it as if it's an esport, but as far as I know, there hasn't been an actual tournament. Like, there's been a show match, but there hasn't been an actual tournament. Like,
there were actually 2 tournaments last weekend. It was the E3 thing, but then there was also an Optic Arena. Held their own LAN event.
All right.
But Optic Arena also, I think the prize was like a ticket to E3. That's it.
Okay, that obviously doesn't count. And I know I'll go ahead and say I don't think E3 counts either, just because as far as I know, like it was like a publicity stunt / tournament. So it's not like for me in tournaments, like you're straight up trying to find the best in the world. Like this is clearly not what that was.
I mean, it's like getting. Imagine having Eminem playing basketball versus whatever. Like I guess it's a competition, technically speaking.
Yeah, technically Daigo played Lupe Fiasco. It's not like, but I don't consider that an actual match.
No.
right?
No, I definitely agree with you. Like that event was definitely not esports, and I think before the announcement that they made, which we're gonna get to in a bit, I guess. Before the announcement was made, a lot of people were worried. Like the 100 million announcement that they made a couple of weeks earlier, that was very vague. Could have been anything really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they sort of committed now to being like, all right, 100 million is pure prize pool. It's not going to be any of the pro AM bullshit. Like the pro AM stuff is going to be separate from the 100 million. Because technically, what they could have done this weekend, they could have literally said, well, these 3 million are part of the 100 million prize pool that we're committing to the season. But no, they are saying they want to make it for the players, and they excluded franchising and anything in that regard, basically saying that this is all going to go to the players. So I do think they're going to support an esports scene, but right now as it is, this game has yet to be an esport, basically.
Yeah. That's kind of where I looked at it, is like, is this really like here's the weird thing about the way people talk about esports is like they don't really have a very well defined definition of it. Like, for instance, like they include like streaming into esports. I don't necessarily think that's the same thing. They'll include like mainstream video games into esports at times. They'll include like a bunch of these random things. There's like, well, for me at least, like esports is specifically about the competition. So like streaming is like part of it, but it's technically not really part of it. It's really just about like the tournaments and the players and the teams and the organizers that are involved.
Yeah, I think Thorne actually made a tweet about that earlier today. Like, I think mainstream media and the mainstream in general has diluted this term so heavily that like esports, it's become really difficult to, especially to non-esports people, to tell them what esports is, because every so often you'll pick up the term esports in mainstream media and it sort of like, it just skews the definition of what it is. Or like I said, there's no real like definition for everybody, because everybody seems to have like their own opinion of it, and especially developers want to push esports, or want to jump the esports train rather, and benefit from the sort of like what other people have accomplished, and be like, yeah, our game is also an esport. Have you seen esports, like the $1 million tournaments? Yeah, we have esports as well. It's like, I'm not too fond of it either, but ultimately, like you said, I think it's going to be about the competition long term, and fortunately, I think that the true esports titles and the true esports competitions will always be able to set themselves apart. So yeah, I'm kind of not as pessimistic about that, just because I think, again, yeah, people can call what they're like Madden esports. I mean, I still have yet to see like a proper Madden tournament. They can call it esports all day long, but ultimately we know that the true esports are like CS:GO, Dota, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did you see the Richard Lewis thing about Fortnite?
Yes, I read it. It was a really good read.
Yeah, basically it's like, oh, that's cool, you got 100 million, but what are you actually gonna do with this? Like, that's a pretty interesting read. You should go check it out if you haven't, just because like it's a much more it's like a pretty realistic take about like what does it actually mean, because it's not like publicity doesn't feed mouths. Basically, is like, what's the point of it? Like, how are they going to use it, etc. And obviously there are no details, but it gives a pretty interesting like counter view, because everybody else is like super hyped about it. I'm like, and he's like, you have to be a bit more realistic and think about it this way and this way, given his own experiences, right? So it's a good read. And then I guess the other thing I know is like a bunch of pop culture people showed up, but I don't really care about any of them. Skim?
Sorry, what was that? What was that?
Like the E3 thing. Apparently, like a bunch of pop culture people showed up. I don't know who.
Yeah,
just a bunch of celebrities or something.
No, it was, so basically what they did was they took a bunch of streamers. So that's the thing, they call it Pro AM, in kind of suggesting as if there were like pro players involved, but no, there was just like streamers and YouTubers, like famous people effectively, and other famous people, but from the traditional sort of like mainstream media world. So they had like a couple of actors, they had musicians, they had athletes from like I think a couple of NFL teams, I want to say. I don't know, I legitimately only knew like 3 people. But just to get back to the Richard Lewis blog post, what I do want to say about that is what is actually more interesting, and I'm sure I'm not saying that he didn't think about it, but rather What I think is interesting is the fact that 100 million, the commitment is for prize pool only. So technically, you have to think about like if they want to run those events, that's going to be like 300 million. Like if they really run a lot of events, especially regularly, that's going to be so much money invested. Like that event that they just ran at E3, that couldn't have been cheap. I wouldn't be surprised if that's like a million or two already there. Like that's actually on the low side of things, considering you have to invite these people there and make sure that they actually compete. Like that's getting what Ninja there is probably already pretty expensive at this point, and then getting all those traditional sort of like celebrities there is also going to be really expensive. And I don't know. I definitely agree with Richard and with you and like with a lot of these doubters effectively, because like yeah, they can throw the money around there. They might have a successful game on the market right now. Doesn't mean they understand esports. Doesn't mean they know what it takes to run an esport. And I just hope that everybody involved, like all those organizations, my organization included, doesn't get burned trying to like have a piece of the cake, because it might just go up in flames, really.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, right? Like it's not there's no proof of concept anywhere, so I'm not exactly sure where all the optimism came from. Beyond like the only thing you can get really optimistic about is like the numbers, the pure numbers, like the amount of people playing, the amount of people streaming, the amount of people watching people stream, but that doesn't necessarily like correlate as far as I know. So it's always a bit of a go ahead.
Yeah, I think the optimism mostly came from the fact that Fortnite as a game is just super popular, and then I think Epic definitely has done a really good job at growing this community and also giving the community effectively what they wanted. Like I think out of all the devs, Epic probably has done some of the best works and the best job in 2018 thus far, and perhaps even in the last year, because they communicate consistently. They always make sure to provide the fans with what they want, and I don't know. I mean, they ran a cool like show event. Like if we take the esports aspect out of it, like if we take the esports discussion completely out of it, then the Pro Am thing was just a cool event for like fans to watch, right? If you're like a huge fan of Ninja and you also happen to be a huge fan of that NFL player or whatever,
or whoever was showing up, yes.
Yeah, and you see them both play. That's exciting. That's really exciting. And I think Epic has done a really good job at basically promoting their own game effectively, really. So I think this is where most of the optimism comes from, and most of the excitement comes from. Like, oh yeah, Fortnite has already been so successful. Like, and 100 million is just like a huge, like a lot of money. I think a lot of players are excited to get a piece of that cake, but I don't know. I think there's definitely a lot of
question marks.
There's a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
Actually, one of our players, Hawkman, our Fortnite captain, actually, he tweeted out like after that World Cup announcement, I have more questions than ever before, because it's so confusing to really like figure out what this pro circuit is actually going to be about. You don't know, and even before this announcement, we didn't know whether they were going to focus on squads, duos, or solos. That's actually really important for these esports teams to figure out, because we already signed 4 players. Right? If they don't promote squads in their esports, like if the format for the eventual final World Cup, like that finale, their own TI, whatever, right? If that is solos or duos, I mean, we're as an organization just screwed, aren't we? Because we just basically hire 2 people for nothing, unless they allow us to
run 2 teams.
Run 2 teams. But that's the thing, we don't know yet, and that's one of the big things that I think Epic needs to figure out. I know they want to run this for the players, but they have to at this point also consider that organizations are part of the players as well. Like a lot of organizations have signed players already, and if Epic wants to run a really good circuit, I think they need to communicate with these teams beforehand and make sure, all right guys, we see that you've invested a couple $1,000 already into hiring these players. This is what our plan is for the circuit. Plan accordingly.
Yeah, it's just man, it's just like, why does everybody go like knee deep in on the first day? Like, why is this a thing now? Like, Overwatch did it basically, even though like it took them forever to do it. Now Fortnite's doing it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to like go like knee deep in like the first go round. Like I feel like it makes more sense just to do it gradually. Whether that's like, even if it's just like a few months, like fuck, we'll just do like a preseason of like 3 to 6 months, figure things out, and then we'll do an actual like entire season or whatever. But it's like
Yeah,
these guys, they're
it's
like they go knee deep in like in the first go around. Like it doesn't make much sense to
that's
me.
it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I wish they would have run some sort of like you said, just a bit of a dry run as well. Like Christ, they could have said, all right, we're just gonna run like a shit ton of open qualifiers. At the end of the year, there's gonna be like the first sort of like inaugural World Cup, and we'll just see from there. Like, what do people want? Like, for all we know, the community wants squad tournaments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe squad is the most exciting thing to follow. Maybe duo is the most exciting thing to follow. We don't really know yet. And I think if you watched the Fortnite event, you would have seen that they also have to figure out their own kinks when it comes to observing. That observing was absolute trash. They missed so many. I mean, that's the nature of battle royale, right?
Yeah.
But PUBG definitely took like a months to figure. Like most of these PUBG tournaments took months to figure out how to properly showcase like kills and like basically events and narrative throughout the tournament on a broadcast. And I think Epic is probably underestimating this. Like it felt like they weren't prepared for that at all. So like you said, I think they should have had some sort of like inaugural season like Overwatch has. But whatever. It's just 100 million, right? For them, it's probably like a Tuesday morning or something.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is like I'm pretty sure battle royale games probably should have gone down like do you ever watch the poker Texas Hold'em tournaments that they used to run, or I think they still run them from like ESPN or whatever?
Yeah, I used to watch poker a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically like that entire thing is like basically like post production. Like they run the tournament and then they fit everything together, right? And the reason you do that is because you don't really know who's going to get knocked out. You don't really know who's going to win beforehand. And there's like so many different people to follow that it makes a lot more sense just to cut it through. Like I imagine that's probably the fastest and easiest way to like produce a like consistent narrative, so to speak, in like a game, in a battle royale game. But they're put in a weird place because as far as I know, every esport player and every player, and I think a majority of these people who are going to be watching are players, want to see it live. So they're put in a weird position, I guess.
Sorry, for some reason, your end seems to cut out with me every time.
Okay.
What was...
Did you hear anything I said?
Yeah, but like what like last 5 words just.
Oh, basically like, basically like I'm saying, like they should probably do it. If I'm just thinking about it theoretically, they should do it like how Texas Hold'em did it, or like you do like post production after after like that day or tournament ends, and then you can figure out what the actual narrative is because you know who wins, who goes through, and whatever. But like because the audience is very very different. Like in esports, at least, a majority of the time, a majority of your audience are going to be actual people who played the game, right? And those types of people want to see it live.
Yeah. No, that's, I mean, that's what I've been trying to debate with people regarding PUBG as well. Like, I do think curated content like that would be much better, even if it's on like a 2-minute delay, perhaps. But I don't know. It like I said, the esports audience just is totally sort of like conditioned to have everything live at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Gamers can really almost basically never have the patience for like that kind of content, especially with social media. Like you won't be able to hide the result effectively from everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of ruins the fun. And I can totally understand why organizers don't do it. But like you said, I do think it would be cool to see. It would definitely be a great experiment. But yeah, most people would just want to see it live, and I don't know. I'm not very very bullish on these esports aspect on these games as an esports just yet. Mostly because I see a lot of similarities between them and like Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
Hearthstone as an esport always struggled because you wanted those big streamers at the event in order to have an actual audience, right?
Yeah.
And most of the time, there's like watching a tournament didn't really feel that much better than watching like just a casual stream. So that's why you see a lot of times when there's like a PUBG event and a tournament and Shroud is streaming, trust me, Shroud will get more views, like so much more. That isn't always the case with other esports. I think in Dota and in CSGO and League, you see that people are more attracted to the competition itself than just individual sort of like POVs or performances. But because these esports or these games grew because of streamers, it's so difficult to grow them as an esport without the streamer aspect of it. So I think this is a hurdle that they will have to overcome because what happens if Ninja is playing while they run their tournaments? Like, will anybody even watch that, right?
Yeah.
Can you actually name any pro player
No.
in either Fortnite or PUBG?
No. I don't know of any.
I can name some, but only because I kind of had to for like work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the scene in itself is just, or both scenes actually are just very, very small still, and it's going to take a lot of effort and time for these scenes to sort of like be accomplished and established as other esports. So that's why I don't think of them as esports yet, because for me there's just not an esports scene just yet.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good wrap up of
Yeah.
Fortnite. So let's see, I guess we can move on to CSGO. Right, so basically Jacob Wolf just reported this. Red Reserve got acquired by Godsent from Refresh. This is in like regulations of the WESA like guidelines, or like of the conflict of interest thing, where you can't own more than one team. Obviously, it's a good thing. Not much else to say about it. Like, do you have anything? Do you have any thoughts about it?
I think if anything, this is like an interesting thing to think about going forward with Dota as well, because Valve now basically has said officially that you can't have, there can't be any sort of like ownership conflicts at TI. So effectively, that means LGD in the future will also have to get rid of their teams going into TI. Like, they can't have 2 or 3 teams at TI anymore. And I think we'll probably see a couple of these kind of transactions, or like transfers rather, in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of these announcements going forward in Dota as well. Just, oh yeah, we have to sell or we sold our roster to whatever.
Yeah, I imagine Jeremy Lin's gonna have to pick one of his rosters. I'd probably sell the Chinese one at this point. I think the American one seems better.
I mean, the Chinese one is definitely trash at this point.
Yeah.
But that's the thing though, right? He might technically not be an owner anymore, but he might still be able to like there are a lot of ways to circumvent that ownership sort of like clause.
Yeah,
that's why it doesn't, like, even in traditional sports, like, people struggle with finding a rule that properly makes sure that a company or a sports organization can't be owned by like a single entity. I know in German football, for example, at least there's this rule, and there's this rule that basically over 50% of the club's sort of like ownership can't be like controlled by like a company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, a company can't have more than 49%, actually, I think is what it is.
Okay.
So what they did was basically, all right, so Red Bull is sponsoring us, like it's a Red Bull owned organization. The Red Bull is sponsoring us, but we can't have Red Bull own more than 50%. Oh, so what should we do? Oh, well, guess what? We just leave the rest with the fans and just, oh, you want to be like, it's a very convoluted system. You can sign up to be like a member of that company, or for that team, or organization. And what they effectively did was just basically the only members allowed in that organization are Red Bull employees. Mm-hmm. So effectively, the organization is still owned by Red Bull, even though they, technically speaking, don't violate the law. And I think people will always figure out a way. Like, if you have enough money, you're gonna find a way. Let's be honest.
It's like it's very similar, I guess, to how Valve dealt with anti-cheats in CSGO. It's basically like a never-ending arms race, so to say. But like lately, they have, like, as far as I know, they're winning it just because they're using like the Google adaptive learning thing, basically the AlphaGo thing, as far as I remember, or something like that. Right. And that alone is like processing faster than the cheats can come out at this point. But yeah, it's a similar concept, except obviously we don't have an AI to deal with the anti-cheat laws. So I think it's cool. I think if like Valve are serious about it, it's going to be a never-ending struggle.
Yeah, that's why I think the law in itself is kind of the rule in itself is kind of nice, and I think it's good that teams are sort of like forced to do something about it, right?
I will say this though, again, Valve is technically a tyrant. So they don't necessarily have to follow the rules.
That's true. Like, Valve could just say, "Fuck it." Like, I do legitimately think you guys are still owned by that company. I can just exclude you. Like, Valve can do whatever the hell they want, and they sure
like, I saw you in a picture shaking Too Good's hand. You assholes. Like, I could see that. Like, why not? Like,
Yeah.
They did it to him. They did it to him at one of their biggest tournaments. So who knows? Like, yeah, it's a bit of a different scenario in that sense, in that they're technically dictators. But as to whether or not they want to wield that hammer, as far as I know, they usually don't, except in the case of obviously Too Good.
He had to die for our sins.
But was it really our sins, or was it their own sins? I think it was their own sins. He had to die for their sins, technically.
Yeah, technically, he had to die for their sins. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's funny though is that that event, like, it kind of needed to be that bad for it to get better. Obviously, we had to pay for it by losing Too Good, but ever since then, Perfect World, they changed their like complete Dota 2 management, whatever, and their events have been some of the best in Dota, like, ever since. Like,
yeah,
DAC
I'm very confused. I'm very confused as to how like the changeover happened so quickly.
That was really surprising to me as well. But obviously I haven't been to any of those events, but I talk regularly to some of the players and managers, and like, they are not holding back with praise. They're always constantly saying that they're some of the best events. I mean, you see it now. I'm sure we're going to talk about it as well, about the the CS:GO Asia Championships.
Yeah,
that is again a super well-run event, and like, you see what the talent are tweeting out, like, oh, they got like presents when they came in, like the key caps and shit like that. Like, Perfect World, I don't know why, but they somehow became the best tournament organizers in right now, basically.
yeah. Like, I don't know why, because like they never tried before. Like, why are you trying now? Like, what happened? Like, that's my question. Like, what happened? Like, all right. But yeah, I guess we can move on. I guess we'll just go straight to CS:GO Asia Championships.
Yeah.
So basically, I'll put it this way: 3 tournaments have decided to hold all their events all at once. Welcome to CS:GO. But they all got like funny sort of, like, they all got a mix of good and bad. Like, not any one of them is like complete trash, and I'll explain why when we get to each tournament. But at least for CS:GO Asia Championships, they got Simple, so that's really all you need technically. Like, Simple versus anybody is like super fun to watch, as far as I'm concerned. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, they could just invite Navi and just any random team and I'd still watch it, just because, you know.
Yeah, Simple.
I mean, technically, that's what is happening at this event.
Yeah, that's straight up what's happening at this event. The fact that they got Simple is like I said, it's like, he's like super entertaining to watch, super aggressive, always brings the fire, and as it turns out, they also have really good production as a tournament.
Well, to be fair, that's like PGL. Right?
Yeah, that's PGL, right? Like,
so basically, what they did was they ran DAC, they ran the Super Major, and then they just stayed in China to run this event.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, like, I think this is pretty much the same quality as the Super Major, and I think you can tell that's just a really well-run event. It's almost a shame that we don't have better teams at this event. Like, what, the second best team is like
NIP, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's not very good.
Sad. Yeah, that's really sad.
Yeah,
but I think this needed to happen because Chinese events in CS:GO still have yet to happen. I think this is like the first big LAN event, I guess. If we take out like the WESG shit, then I definitely don't count that as a proper event.
Yeah.
So I think this kind of needs to happen as sort of like an inaugural thing, and also for the other CS:GO teams to see that this is like a really well-run event with like a lot of money and a lot of like production, and the fact that you're treated super well, so that in the future they can commit to these kind of events. The scheduling is a bit unfortunate because I think it clashes with ESL, Belo Horizonte, whatever.
Not like not in time zones, but same days.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of like the teams, you know, that you would want at an event are currently in Brazil. So
yeah,
again, I think this is a really good inaugural event, and I hope that in the future we're gonna have like a proper CS:GO Asia Championships that rivals the one in Dota. Because
I mean, to rival the one in Dota though, like, you actually have to have good Chinese teams.
True. No, that's very true. Otherwise, it's just a regular CS:GO event. You happen to hope you host it in China.
Yeah, like I like here's an interesting like theory some people have, is like, because they think they have figured out the cheating thing, there's people starting to think CS:GO might go free to play. Like that's like what people are straight up thinking at this point. But
Yeah.
like, listen, I don't believe that. Listen, they also all thought for some reason like all of Ally Power was going to be unbanned after the 1 year ban. Turned out that it was an indefinite ban. So
But
like,
but the thing that would make it more logical, or the way why it would line up, is because Steam is now officially in
China,
launched in China,
right?
and if you wanna conquer that market, if like officially, basically, right? Um, I don't know, making it free to play would be the perfect way to do so.
I mean, it's the only way to do it in Asia. Like, I'm not.
Yeah,
It's weird because you would think Valve would know this, right? Like, you have to go free to play in Asia if you ever want like a
right.
big multiplayer game to go big there, just because of like how the entire culture works. So, but they haven't. They've never done it before, so I'm not. I'm not holding my breath. But yeah, if CS:GO does go free to play, then you might see enough influx of players that maybe a good team can show up. But we'll have to
That's
see.
the dream. That's the dream anyway. I mean, if you see some of these Chinese teams playing here and there, you can see that they have what it takes to sort of like become a good team at some point,
Mm-hmm.
but they're sort of like missing a lot of the tools, mostly just regular scrimming partners. Like when we see those teams competing internationally, Tailu, um, even VGJ Flash right now, I think wasn't actually that bad.
Yeah,
Uh, like if you see them compete, you can tell, right? There is something there, but unfortunately, you could also tell that they just
they're missing a lot.
obviously lack. They're missing a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like you said, if we had like that surge of players coming in, and all like Asia has so much talent in terms of like gaming,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah,
that
like
could be pretty dope.
yeah, like and like generally speaking, Korea like in an esport that has like every country in play, so to speak. Like a shit, like all of them, like are seriously playing in this game and have like pretty decent player base. Generally speaking, it's like Korea is the best, obviously, because like they work like drones and all that stuff. But China is generally second, and there are a few reasons for that because they do have like some level of like workman's culture, but it's also because they just have so many people. So it's that's part of it too. So generally, you want to see China enter an esport. Like I know, like tournament organizers and teams just want them to enter because they have a lot of money. But for me, it's just because like if you get enough of these guys, eventually you're gonna find like some incredible player.
I mean, you see it in Dota, right?
Yeah.
That China has so much to offer, and I mean, I complain about Chinese spots at TI quite regularly,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is they have at least deserved 4 or 5 out of those 6 slots. So that means what? Out of the top 20 teams, 5 or 6 of them are Chinese.
Yeah.
That is incredible. So imagine in CS. Like right now, we couldn't even fathom a top team outside of uh, NA or Europe, and even NA. Up until like a year ago or 2 ago, we only had like SK
Mm-hmm.
noteworthy. Everybody else was like a one-hit wonder here
Yeah.
or there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this would be really important for the scene. Would also a lot of opportunities for tournaments. Chinese, like there's a couple of Chinese organizers that would run these events. Like obviously Perfect World, but then there's also MDL. I've talked to Mars TV before, and they are very interested in running Chinese CS:GO events. So there's a lot of opportunities there if that Chinese market grows. But obviously I'd say we're still like a year or 2 away from having like regular Chinese teams at having Chinese teams regularly at our events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ball is in Valve's court, so to say, I guess, on this
Pretty
one.
much.
And I will say, like, for those who happen to only watch Overwatch, I don't know why you'd be here, but if you do, Shanghai Dragons is definitely not indicative of actual Chinese skill.
The dream is alive. The dream
Yo,
is
man,
alive.
I've already written an article. I'm already assuming they're gonna lose the San Francisco Shock. Oh my god, I've got this on lockdown. I've won Skim. Victory has been assured. They thought it was impossible. They thought surely in 20 other tries Shanghai Dragons could have won. They couldn't even win one.
It's
It's historic.
how do you even do this? I mean, as a team, I don't know. Not one single win. How's that even possible?
It's incredible in its own way because it's like you're making history by doing the impossible, but like the impossible is so utter trash. It's amazing. It's like literally any random 5 scrubs that are thrown in there would have gotten the same result. That's how amazing this is. That's how amazing this is.
We could be fully salaried Overwatch pros.
Yeah, we could be, right? And apparently they actually salaried some dude for like months, and he wasn't playing Overwatch for like the last like 2 months. So shout out to Shanghai Dragons. Actually, do you know the entire story behind Shanghai Dragons? Because like everything that's coming out of there is like ridiculous.
Give me the full deets.
Okay, so first of all, obviously, when the entire roster was formed, like everybody was like, I'm pretty sure, not everybody, but like a decent amount of people were like, I'm not certain these are like the best Chinese players. And obviously, like a bunch of the young players, best Chinese players, were too young at the time. But like even in the case of like San Francisco Shock, they're like, fuck it, even if they're too young, we're gonna buy them now, and then we'll have them like train up, etc. Right? But obviously, these guys didn't do it. So then you go into Overwatch League, and they were late, as in everybody else was there like 1 or 2 weeks earlier, and they showed up like on the day of like the first pre-invitational tournament. So obviously, they didn't have time to practice, which is pretty funny because they probably would have needed it. Then they had no, as far as I know, they had no coach, or if they did have a coach, he was complete trash because they had no strategy.
No, I heard that as well. They didn't have a coach going into it.
Yeah, they had no coach for a long period of time. Then they went into the midseason transfer like, okay, we need players, and then apparently like they got like a bunch of the weaker Korean players, but they did. Here's my problem: is they didn't go all Korean. They just went 4 out of 6 Korean, and
if you can, you gotta go full Korean.
Yeah, like they could have gone full Korean. And like my answer was either they go all Chinese or they go all Korean, but they went half and half. And then with a team of 4 out of 6 Koreans, they decided everybody speak Chinese. Think about that. The comms were literally put into Chinese. Like they told the entire team to play in Chinese. This happened for like 2 or 3 weeks, and they're like, "Oh, this is a complete trash. I guess just come however you want." So they fixed that, but by the time the transfer lock ended, they realized their 2 Chinese players were complete trash. Actually, yeah, I think it was like their two Chinese support players were complete trash, basically, and they couldn't do anything about it. So all of a sudden, there's like a gigantic vulnerability in their team, and then basically every time they've gotten close, they have pulled defeat from the jaws of victory. Like they completely choked. Like the entire team chokes. Because there's like gigantic amount of pressure just to win one for these guys. So like they all lose all the time. It's amazing.
Didn't you know, with a Chinese Korean thing, didn't one of them actually, wasn't there the story about how a certain word in Chinese, depending on how you like pronounce it, meant something completely different or something?
Yeah, like
they really thought like Grigori was like flaming them or something. I don't know.
It wasn't like flaming. It was more like a retreat and left or something, where like very similar words or something.
Oh, right,
or something.
Right.
So like they went to the complete opposite directions every time she tried to communicate.
I'm telling you, man, you can't make this stuff up. Like this Shanghai Dragon stuff is.
No, and then the 2 final pieces I know of is like they practice 12 hours a day, and obviously, if you actually understand science, you know that there's a certain point where you actually start losing. You lose efficacy, and then it becomes even worse for you. Like as in, like you start losing whatever you gained. So that's pretty funny. And then the final bit you can't believe is they finally got a good coach, but he came in the second to last week. Like he literally showed up like yesterday or like 2 days ago.
Hilarious.
So I was like, absolutely. Why would you get a coach at this point? It's way too late, man. It's way too late. So yeah, everything about this organization is hilarious to me.
Well, they honestly, I would go full meme and I would just celebrate it with like a jersey or something, like a special T-shirt.
Yeah, I do have that jersey. I'm not sure if you ever saw that tweet, but I do actually have a jersey that says "Own 40."
Wait, do you actually?
Yeah.
Do you physically have it?
Yeah, I physically have it.
Holy shit! Did you buy it?
Yeah, of course I bought it. Listen, man, some people think it's enough just to meme and joke, but no, you have to put your soul into it. Listen, I am willing to put my soul into my jokes. See, that's how dedicated I am.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I only saw like a tweet about it. I think Slasher tweeted about it.
No, see, Slasher only did like the photo, only did like the actual shop. He didn't buy it. I actually straight up bought it. So,
damn. Have you posted about it yet?
Yeah, I posted about it a long time ago. I'm not sure what else I'm gonna do with it. I'm probably just gonna frame it and be like, this is a historic moment in esports history, and then I'm going to. If they ever make an esports history museum, I'm obviously gonna try to send it to them and say you need to put this up. But yes,
you should go to LA and get it signed by the entire team.
See, I think that's a little too cruel, but maybe I would. Maybe I would.
Damn.
But yeah,
that is commitment to the meme.
Yeah.
Dear God.
Listen, man, I'd have done this for a bunch of different memes. It just happens like this is the only one where I can straight up buy. So, yeah, it's a good time to be alive for me, at least. Not so much for the Shanghai Dragons.
Not so much for them.
Yeah, it's a pretty good time. So, I guess moving on. I guess we can talk about Belo Horizonte. It's going on right now. A bunch of different teams went to this one, I guess, but it's similar to the last CS:GO tournament, and like a bunch of them are missing players. So let me check real quick. Like, yeah, basically Olaf Meister is still missing, so FaZe is using Chroman, and I think Kerrigan basically said, we don't have enough time anymore, we have to find a fifth. So Olaf Meister is probably going to be out.
Which is super unfortunate.
Yeah, because like it's not like Olaf Meister is bad. It's just like this is just how it goes. Like the major is coming up in like 3 months. You don't have time to like stick around anymore. So you just gotta go. Mouse Sports, they have nothing standing in for Oscar. Oscar had some weird personal thing, but he did end up playing FPL while the team was playing in ESL Belo Horizonte.
So weird. Yeah, it's so weird.
So I'm not sure what that's about, but okay. SK obviously struggling. Like they lost to Space Soldiers on the first day, but I still think they're gonna win. Win not the tournament, but win out of this group at least. And then NTC, this is like the return of the Villa mix or the nightclub mix as it's known. FNX, Phelps, KNG, and then Bit and Cello to round it out, but they don't seem to be very good right now.
This is such a weird event, man.
Actually, they just got straight up eliminated by Big, so they are pretty trash.
Yeah, I don't know. This event is pretty weird.
Yeah,
mostly because like these teams playing are so weird, and it's like this.
Yeah, basically, like the only thing I can say is like you want to see Liquid play FaZe in the finals.
It feels like such a disappointment after Stollider and even ECS. You know,
yeah,
having this kind of event.
Yeah, because like ECS, like they also had problems, but like they still had Astralis there, so I was like, oh, this is gonna be sick.
Exactly. They at least had Astralis. So what does this event have? They have
Liquid.
Team Liquid, I guess.
Yeah, like it takes two at least to make a good event, but like everybody else is like so banged up, it doesn't feel like an actual tournament. See, if only CS:GO Asia and Belo Horizonte had combined, you could see Liquid versus Navi, because that's what I want to see right now.
That'd be pretty dope. Yeah, even SK versus Navi would be
pretty interesting, right? Like, but as it is, like this is like they kind of divided it up, so the teams divided it up in a strange way. So like neither one is like great necessarily. Like they're just okay. So yeah, that's just how it goes. You have any other thoughts about this tournament? Like,
not really.
Yeah, like pretty much. Now I will get to the third tournament, and this one, even though it is way weaker than the other two previously described, there is something funny going on in this tournament. So, basically, I messaged you yesterday asking to see if Complexity had some kind of motto, some kind of like hashtag like. Obviously, North is like, hear me roar, or something weird like that. I forget what it was. Optic, obviously, green wall. And then Complexity had nothing. And I was like, God damn it. Damn it. Because I actually have this article that's coming out for this specific tournament. And obviously, this tournament's not going to be about the CSGO. It's going to be about the drama. And the title of the article that would have been, actually is right now, is called A Tale of Two Kicks. The war between the red, the green, and the lion. So, if you had somehow like sold Complexity on any of my slogans I had sent to you, I would have put one of them in and would have changed the entire scope of that title. It would have been like the Lion, the Green Wall, and the Red Star or something. All right. So basically, there are 3 teams that have like serious drama with each other at this tournament. So do you know about North Optic and Complexity thing? Obviously, you're part of Complexity.
Yeah,
so
I mean, yeah.
So yeah,
no, it's pretty
tasty.
It stings, especially because in Austin we lost to Optic.
Yeah, but listen, man, Optic died.
Again.
Optic died at Austin, so they also died. So you can get your revenge still. I mean,
hopefully.
Like, listen, man. Like, you see that tweet Config tweeted
with Shazam and
Shazam and Stanislaw. That was great, by the way.
The picture.
Yeah, the picture. Yeah. Obviously, not the rest of it wasn't as great because you gotta be a bit more clever, a bit more funny to pull that off.
Yeah, he was really forced, but the picture was actually pretty hilarious.
The picture itself was great. So but yeah, for those who don't know, basically, I'll give you a quick preview of my article that's coming out tomorrow, I think, before the tournament starts. Basically, North is the Big Bang of 2018. So, basically what happened was Caribbe's like, man, this Astralis team isn't good. I'm going to make them incredible, though. I'm going to leave, and Magus is going to come in, and I am going to destroy every 2018 team by creating the ultimate monster known as Astralis. Then he joined North, and North in turn was like, Config, KGB, you need to get the fuck out. Ruga, you too. And they're like, what the fuck? And then Malk's like, don't worry about it. Just join me and Optic. And then he got them, and he took Stanislaw, Shazam. And then he was just waiting for the Danish coup d'etat until he got Heroic, kicked them out. And then now Complexity was like, wait, you just let out Shazam and Stanislaw? Well, I guess we'll take them. Obviously, Complexity themselves were a victim of the FNS 80th dimensional chess game. So they were on the lookout for a new in-game leader and a new opper. So it kind of worked out for all parties involved. Or another way you can look at it is all parties involved got ruined by North. Depends how you look at it.
Kirby is like the reverse FNS.
Yeah. Kirby's like playing one-dimensional checkers or something.
I gotta agree though with you. That's kind of like this sort of like spiciness makes this tournament pretty interesting. And on top of that, you also have teams that I would argue are in a pretty even like playing field.
Yeah, the only team.
I would obviously favor Gambit out of all of these teams.
No, I wouldn't. I'd take Renegades.
Really?
Yeah, the Gambit is so bad right now. Oh my god. They ruined Hobbit, man. They ruined Hobbit and they ruined the Dren. It's over. It's all over.
Well, that's true. But still, like I'd say that there's potential for pretty much most of these teams to like sort of
make an upset. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I think this is sort of, and this is why I like DreamHack events actually. It's because DreamHack isn't scared of having these kind of events, like these obviously tier 2 events, but that still are going to provide like a lot of entertainment probably because these teams are going to be on the same playing field.
Yeah.
And I wish this existed in Dota as well, but it's a different topic altogether.
Yeah. That tournament does exist. It's now the major. I don't know what you want to call it. I'm calling it the major qualifier because it's basically what it is.
Well, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it exists now, but yeah, it's a bit different, right? So yeah, this one's just interesting just because there's like a lot of history between those 3 specific teams, and yeah, should be fun. So you actually are part of Complexity. How hard do you have any insight as to how that team is running right now?
I think they're doing pretty well right now, as far as I know. Going into DreamHack Austin, they didn't actually have any practice together.
Yeah.
Pretty much, they only had like a day or 2 days of practice because both Stanislaw and Def had to figure out visa-related stuff. So none of them were actually in the country while we were like preparing for DreamHack Austin. So it was a bit rough. But generally speaking, yeah, they should be doing much better now. They've been working on a couple of maps to specialize in, and I know I can look at their schedule actually. They're doing a lot of like server work, obviously, scrimming quite regularly. Like they're putting in hours, really, a lot of hours, day in day out. So Doesn't necessarily mean anything at the end of the day. Like if you can't put it into practice, it doesn't really mean anything. But at least they're prepared this time around, as opposed to Dreaming Austin. So I think that kind of has me optimistic.
All right. So
about this team.
I'm pretty sure you don't like talk to Stanislaw, but here's my question: is Stanislaw like Misery? Is he this a man like fueled by vengeance?
That's a good question, actually. He seems a lot calmer than Misery. Like Misery is sort of like a hothead in that sense,
Yeah.
right? I can imagine him lying in bed like at night and be like, "Oh, Sumail, you're gonna go down."
No, like I imagine him like Arya from Game of Thrones, like he's literally reading a hit list of names: Sumail, Fear, Universe, Zai. I don't know why Zai and Universe are there, but
I'm not sure about Fear. Did you see that Fear tweet actually?
Fear?
When he tweeted out about going to the boot camp?
he's hella happy that he's not part of EG anymore.
No, basically, basically he tweeted out like, it's been a while since I've been so happy to play Dota.
Yeah.
Like I think Fear was in the same boat as Misery. Honestly.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe not Fear, but he's probably like Sumail, Arteezy, Crit. Yeah. Puppy is still in there. He's still hating on Puppy. Eternal Envy is still in there. Still hating on Eternal Envy. Vengeance is eternal for Misery, I imagine. So.
If that's what enables him to be second place at TI, why not?
Yeah, man. Like he's Listen, I am actually going to write an article if somehow Misery eliminates EG. It's going to be called like the count of I don't know where the fuck he comes from. I'm going to have to research his hometown. But like it'll be like the count of like Yonkaping or whatever. Like this guy is this guy is only driven by vengeance, and only vengeance drives him towards great things in life.
Would be hilarious. But unfortunately, I don't know. Going through that AU qualifier is going to be hell because
only
one slot. Yeah.
And I think you're with me, right? Like OG is probably going to take it.
Very likely.
Yes.
Just on paper, I think they're already the best team.
You're right.
I mean, there's definitely a chance for Misery's team. Like on paper, they're also pretty good. Probably like the second best team, in that region right now. But who knows?
Rough world out
these
there.
qualifiers are always weird, especially I don't know. These qualifiers are always weird. I've definitely seen TI qualifiers where the best team didn't win. Like I remember EG Tier 3, like they did make it, even though they were the best team in that qualifier, but they just choked.
Yeah, like I don't know if I ever told you this, but I basically have a 2 out of 8 rule. As in, like in a playoff of like 8 teams or 8 players, there's going to be 2 upsets. So on that note, tell me which two slots do you think are going to get upset in this TI qualifiers? Not the opens, but just in general.
TI qualifiers, the 2 upsets out of all of them.
Yeah, out of all of them, because basically that's about the equivalent like number.
I think China is gonna have an upset, but I'm not sure if it's really an upset. If it's, I think most people would be unable to really call the second team that's gonna qualify in that region.
Yeah.
So I think that's gonna be like upset potential. Like I could totally see like IG Vitality, even eHome taking it. eHome especially, I think with Zhao as coach, and like they seem to be really into it. But then there's also DK. Actually burning and OP reuniting.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, I mean,
like why did
look, that duo worked out wonders in IG. So
no, like my question is like, why is Burning coming back now? Because I
don't know, to be honest.
Because I feel like when he retired, he was like really good.
Yeah, I don't know. I believe he said he would retire out of personal reasons. So
so maybe those personal reasons are over. And now he's like, Xiaowei, it's time to come out. Oh shit, Xiaowei, it's already a coach. Never mind. OP, let's go.
I definitely believe in an upset at NA. Like I don't think Optic, VG, Storm, and EG are going to qualify. I think one of them is not going to make it.
Yeah.
And I think that qualifies already as an upset.
Yeah.
Like there's so many teams in that open qualifier that I think that could potentially take it. And obviously Complexity. I think my team is also a team that has generally done really well in these qualifiers. Like we.
Yeah, but that was with Swindles, so I'm not saying it's like not necessarily the same, but like Swindles definitely has a bit of. I feel like he changes the color of a team. I'll put it that way.
That's true. And I think the biggest region actually for upset potential is SA, because everybody expects Pain to make it.
Yeah.
But SA is so brutal in terms of like their own region. Like these teams, Pain might be able to upset everybody on LAN, but in their like qualifiers. Trust me, everybody can beat anybody. Like
And then they also
That's
have
one of the
Swindles and Fear coming down too, right?
that'd be pretty dope if that team actually makes it. But yeah,
Listen, I'm also gonna write an entire article if somehow Swindles and Fear takes out EG. I don't know how, but somehow if both of those teams get to the TI and Swindles and Fear take them out, I am going to like go ham because that's
I'm
just
honestly
too funny.
I'm honestly so surprised if they're qualifying through SA. I feel like they would have a much better. Because in SA you have to beat so many teams for one spot, but in NA you kind of only have to beat one team.
Yeah, for one spot, right?
If that makes
Yeah,
for one spot out of three, if that makes any
but
sense.
but I think at least if you just look on paper, like maybe they're just thinking of it on terms of like pure skill.
Well, maybe.
Like maybe they just straight up think like that stack with like I forget, but I remember like Tomato was on that stack or something.
Yeah.
And Tomato's obviously been hyped up as a pretty good skilled player. Whether or not he's an actual good player is still yet to be seen, in my opinion. Just because we haven't seen him have a very strong land, but maybe that's what they're thinking. But yeah, all right. So let's go back to NA, right? So I talked to both Knoxville and Powell about this. Basically, like if I'm going to pick a team that's going to get upset, I'd pick EG for NA.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
And Powell bring up this interesting point about basically OG is in a weird spot because they don't have anybody to practice with. Because at least before the qualifier started, because everybody was at the super major, right?
That's not entirely true.
And
well, I mean, yeah, no, it is true, but at the same time, there's so many CIS teams that you can scrim with that I think it's not really that bad. Plus, our team flew out to scrim in Europe as well, so there was our team to scrim against as well. So I think it is a good point. You don't get to scrim against like Secret, Liquid, or whatever, but you probably wouldn't have been able to anyway because let's face it, they don't have to scrim in the next month or so.
Yeah, I think those teams would probably take a break before going to TI. Yeah, it just makes the most sense. But you're actually getting to the point I was going to get to, because Knoxville told me Complexity was staying at their place to practice in Europe.
Yes.
And I came up with this theory, and I want to ask if this theory has any validity. Basically, here's my theory. No Tail was angry, he was bitter about his split up with Fly, and then here comes this team from NA, this team known as Complexity, and they're like, listen, No Tail, we can get revenge for you. You just gotta tell us all of No Fly's and S4 secrets. Just give it to us, practice with us, then we'll go back and we'll knock them the fuck out of the qualifier. Now, how true is this completely made up story?
Very unlikely.
Yeah, too bad.
Players don't really do that kind of stuff. Like, even if he was willing to, I guess, quote unquote, leak it, I'm not even sure any of our players would be willing to ask it. I think more so than anything, they might have met up and they might have like discussed like how certain teams play. Like players definitely do talk about how certain teams play, right? Like they talk about Liquid at that event, like they play that way, and I think if you want to beat them, you have to do this, and no, I think you have to beat them, you have to do that. That definitely happens, but I mean, there's not really a big of a point to discuss like Fly and the S4 anyway, because odds are they're going to play a little bit different with, or they're going to employ like a completely different strategy and style.
I think the strategy and style is different, but I think personal tendencies stay the same.
Oh, right. No, for sure.
And if you can exploit that, you have like a small edge. Like, I remember like basically like, remember that Eternal Envy Fnatic thing where like Fnatic had, like, they kicked out Ohio, right?
Right.
And then Ohio ended up having to like stand in for another team, but like they didn't reveal it was Ohio. It was like it was under some different name. But then when they played them, they're like, wait, this is just Ohio. And then they just started abusing the shit out of Ohio because Ohio kept making the same mistakes he did on Fnatic. So it's like I'd imagine it'd be like that kind of situation.
No, that's definitely something that can happen. No, for sure. But I would imagine that teams at this level kind of have this tendency, or have this sort of like introspective anyway. Especially like if you're Complexity, you already know how to deal with Arteezy and Sumail and Crit. I'm not sure how much more beneficial it would be to be able to like figure out like, you know, well, like how do you tilt S4 or something, or like what's his like weakness or something.
I mean,
no, but in theory they would be having an edge over them for sure. Don't get me wrong. At the same time, you don't even necessarily have to ask No-Tail because both Moon Meander and Zach have also
Oh,
played
that's true.
with Fly before. So technically, there's
But I
some
mean,
knowledge there already.
but Moon Meander hasn't played with him for a while now, so
Well, both of them haven't really played with him
Yeah,
for a while.
right.
Like TI5 was it?
long time ago.
Actually,
No,
wait,
Moon
no,
Meander was on
Moon
OG,
Meander-
so that's what I was
yeah, he
talking
was
about.
on OGs. So, yeah, no.
Yeah, I remember, like,
I don't know.
he was the first victim of friendship.
Yeah, he was. He was the first victim of friendship. Not, but in theory, teams would have an edge over other teams if they had this sort of like knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't really think this is something that people would like actively seek out in other players.
Okay.
It would be really awkward if you ask somebody, you know, can you give me like, you know, details on like how to beat them? Be like, and the opponent is telling you, well, no, because that's like, against competitive integrity, and that's just a really awkward situation.
No, man,
because you don't want to out yourself as like a guy that wants to effectively cheat, right?
Listen, man, vengeance has no vengeance doesn't care.
No, hey, I honestly, if they went out drinking, that could naturally come out as soon as they're like semi-drunk or whatever. So there's definitely a possibility there, but again, I don't think that any of them would have inquired about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so on a more serious note, then, I haven't seen this complexity team without Swindles. So how have they lived without the leader, so to say?
Difficult to say because they've obviously now changed completely because they now picked up Adam. But afterwards, they actually tried having different players be the in-game leader to see what works best for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they definitely struggled at first when they kicked Swindles because they couldn't really find a new permanent leader. I think they settled on Moo and Zach to be like co-callers, which I think sort of worked, but it was still just not enough.
Yeah,
and that's why obviously they went for Adam because they want somebody that can like
take it permanently.
Yeah. I mean, to a degree, everybody makes calls in a game. Like in Dota, everybody at some point in the game will make a call on what to do effectively. But it's good to have somebody that is always going to be in charge of it, because that's sort of like a responsibility taken away from others, and allows them to focus more on playing.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them play with this new squad either, but as far as I know, the scrims are going well. They're meshing, or they're starting to mesh, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. For most of these teams, open qualifiers is still pretty much just like scrimming and practice, really.
Yeah.
Because the teams that you face are mostly just like 5K random stacks.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. All right. I think that about covers it. Like I'm like you said, basically, we still have yet to go to the actual qualifiers, because for me the actual ones don't start until the opens are done. All right. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Yeah. I guess we'll end it here. You have any shout outs?
No, I'm good.
All right. Shout outs to myself, I guess. Basically, complexity. Think about some of these slogans. Red Star, obviously, for the fact that you are now connected with.
I think
Texas.
if we wanted to have the hashtag Red Star, we'd probably have to change our logo.
Yeah, you might have to change your logo. Red, red, and white, obviously, directly connected to your logo. So think about some of those. You need a hashtag. Basically, is all I'm saying.
No, I agree. I've been thinking about one like pretty much every day since I joined this company.
Yeah.
I've got like a couple of really generic ones, and every so often I find myself saying something like in my head. I'll be saying something, yo, how about something coal up or something, and I realize, oh wait, it's just phase, except I replaced the word phase with coal.
Mm-hmm.
So no.
Yeah. All right. See you guys later.